We are not the first, and we won't be the last to have fought this. I humbly acknowledge that I am fortunate enough to be standing on the shoulders of giants. Those giants are falling, and the ropes that bind them for their takedown are braided together with strands of ignorance, fueled with misplaced confidence, falsehoods consumed via memes, and lack of critical thinking standing on the crutches of frauds who have found a loophole to monetize the idiocracy within a democracy. As Stephen Hawking said, the greatest enemy of knowledge is not ignorance, it is the illusion of knowledge. You see, Stephen Hawking didn't say that, but the Google image search algorithm shows that he did. So do other search engines. Try it for yourself. This quote is by an American historian, as one can find out if they look into it. Now, this blunder, like so many others that our current tech industry is responsible for, was born out of a race to profitable innovation without deliberation, empathy, or compassion. As we've often heard in the early part of 2020, it's a very fast-moving situation, and that's the nature of any highly contagious virus. Fake news is that virus, and social media has increased its contagion level exponentially. These companies have critical social and personal data that has been analyzed and monetized with no regard for social ethics or truth. While these Silicon Valley giants were collecting our data and profiling us to sell us products, a dark undercurrent of filter bubbles had started to set in this cloud-based world. Unlike the problem of climate change or wealth inequality, which exists outside the human mind in the physical world, the problem of fake news swims in the stream of our technological and psychological consciousness. This problem stems, thrives, and spreads in the minds of the individual. Fake news will continue to interfere and amplify every other problem out there, which makes it very dangerous. My research didn't really begin with this final semester. It had been going on for a while. This thesis gave me an inspiring reason to pursue the observation of how digital media coupled with the internet is changing us and our world in ways we never imagined. I've been to many rabbit holes during this process. Some holes I'm still inside of, continuing to observe and take notes. For my secondary research, I started with a study called Data-Driven Elections. This extensive study dealt with datasets and propagation of misinformation and disinformation online. It did this in various ways, but I was looking for a study that dealt with the human psychology side of the problem, which I believe is the primary reason for the organic propagation of fake news. This led me to few other studies. There were two hypotheses after this study in which they conducted multiple experiments that studied pattern perception and agency detection. These studies were conducted with people from different backgrounds of education, professions, age, gender, but what they concluded is applicable to all groups of subjects. This study led me to ask myself, how did we get here? That question led me to this book. This book perfectly observes and makes a case for how technology and increasing levels of education have exposed people to more information than ever before. These have also helped fuel a surge in narcissistic and misguided intellectual egalitarianism that has crippled informed debates on any number of issues. He warns us in the book that when ordinary citizens believe that no one knows more than anyone else, democratic institutions themselves are in danger of falling either to populism or to technocracy, or in the worst case, a combination of both. In this book, Andrew Marantz describes two worlds he's been embedded in. The first is the world of social media entrepreneurs who, acting out of naivety and reckless ambition, upended all traditional means of receiving and transmitting information. The second is the world of the people he calls the gatecrashers, the conspiracists, white supremacists, and nihilistic trolls who have become experts at using social media to advance their corrosive agenda. Antisocial reveals how the boundaries between technology, media, and politics have been erased, resulting in a deeply broken informational landscape, the landscape in which we all now live. I revisited the movie American History X to research the topics of alienation and groupthink in the pre-social media era. But I stumbled upon a scene.
You see, things have changed since you've been gone, Derek.
You talk about organization? Wait till you see what we've done with the internet. We've got every gang from Seattle to San Diego working together now. They're not competing anymore, they're consolidated.
Only we lack is a little overall leadership. And that's where you come in.
The lead character of the film, Derek Wynyard, played by Edward Norton, is what one would call a social influencer in 2020, and there are many of those out there. 22 years since the release of this film, the internet has changed and evolved multiple times. What hasn't changed in all these years is the groupthink behavior. While I was working on the script for this presentation during the last week of July, a congressman in the USA summarized the problem succinctly better than I could, so I'll let him take over.
Mr. Zuckerberg, we've seen the dominance of several of the companies appearing before us today, that it's not just harmful to our economy and competition, but it's harmful to the founding principles of our democracy. Facebook and Google are designed to keep users on their platforms whatever the cost. Because disinformation, propaganda, and hateful speech are good for engagement, they're good for business. But over 100 years ago, the Supreme Court Justice Oliver Wendell Holmes Jr. wrote, "The most stringent protection of free speech would not protect a man in falsely shouting fire in a theater and causing panic." My first question is, Mr. Zuckerberg, do you agree with that principle, that there are limits to harmful and false speech, and that are particularly important when it comes to the health and safety of the public? Well, Mr. Zuckerberg, you have 1 billion users and almost 50,000 employees, and so you agree you have a responsibility to remove harmful lies from your platform, correct?
That I do not believe that we have any incentive to have this content on our service. People don't like it.
Except that, Mr. Zuckerberg, with all due respect, except that it is often the most engaging. It's the most, it brings the most likes, or it brings the most activity, which of course produces great profit. So you do have an incentive. The more engagement there is, the more money you make on advertising. So let me ask you a question. Let me give you some specific examples that will illustrate my concerns. These are some of the top 10 most shared articles on Facebook in 2020. Trump suggests injection of disinfectant to beat coronavirus and clean the lungs. Coronavirus hype, biggest political hoax in history. U.S. hospitals getting paid more to label cause of death as coronavirus. During the greatest public health crisis of our lifetime, don't you agree that these articles viewed by millions on your platform will cost lives? The problem is Facebook is profiting off and amplifying disinformation that harms others because it's profitable. This isn't a speech issue. It's about Facebook's business model that prioritizes engagement in order to keep people on Facebook's platform to serve up more advertisements. So I'll ask you very specifically, what are you doing right now to protect people from demonstrably false claims related to this deadly pandemic?
Congressman, I'll certainly answer that, but I have to disagree with the assertion that you're making that this content is somehow helpful for our business. It is not what people want to see, and we rank our what we show in feed based on what is going to be the most meaningful to people and is going to create long-term satisfaction, not what's just going to get engagement or clicks today. That's a common misperception about the company.
If that's true, Mr. Zuckerberg, how do you explain that on Monday, the second most popular post on Facebook was a Breitbart video claiming that you don't need a mask and hydroxychloroquine is a cure for COVID. And in the first 5 hours after being posted on Facebook, it racked up 20 million views and over 100,000 comments before Facebook acted to remove it.
Well, Congressman, a lot of people shared that, and we did take it down because it violates our policies. We work with the CDC.
After 20 million people saw it over the period of 5 hours. I mean, doesn't that suggest, Mr. Zuckerberg, that your platform is so big that even with the right policies in place, you can't contain deadly content? That, Mr. Zuckerberg, if a television station runs a false political advertisement, they're held liable for that. Why should Facebook or any other platform be different? While you may not be a publisher, you're responsible maybe not for the first posting, but you then take that posting and you apply a set of algorithms that decide how you will disseminate that, which is a business decision, not a First Amendment decision. And it's hard to understand why Facebook shouldn't be responsible for those business decisions. I think these examples, unfortunately, Mr. Zuckerberg, are just the tip of the iceberg. It's not just about COVID. Facebook hosts or enables countless pages and ads that are dedicated to conspiracy theories and calls to violence, including content that led to the white supremacist rally in Charlottesville in 2017. And Facebook gets away with it because you're the only game in town. There's no competition forcing you to police your own platform. Allowing this misinformation to spread can lead to violence. And frankly, I believe it strikes at the very heart of American democracy.
Russian bots, Russian trolls, combining with the American alt-right media convinced a non-trivial portion of the Texas population that it was an attempt by the Obama administration to round up political opponents.
Grim, I know. But wait, there's hope. Using the tools for modeling the spread of infectious disease, cyber risk researchers Elizabeth Pate Cornell and Travis Trammell are analyzing the spread of fake news much as if it were a strain of Ebola. I believe it is incumbent upon the social media platforms to cut the transmission chains and correct the information using policy, artificial intelligence, and exponentially more human moderators. While they do that, I decided to focus on educating the most vulnerable targets. So what have I learned? Well, as of now, social media services are unable to successfully moderate or educate, and even if they are willing and able, people will move to other services, which is exactly why they avoid doing it. We have been in the middle of an information war since the inception of the printing press and then postal services, but now each one of us is an editor-in-chief and a mail carrier, and every home has multiple mailboxes, scrolling away. Many of these people fall for the fake news because it pulls at the strings of their hearts or steps on a nerve. Either way, it's an emotional reaction and not one based in facts, which is why this war cannot be fought just with facts and truth, but with empathy and compassion with some inception. Based on my research, I try to show how in today's era, information gets consumed through digital media. This chart depicts the types of information consumers out there. Information gets consumed via digital media in two ways, mass media and social media. We are all born into ignorance and are in the uninformed category. Depending on the conditions of one's life, one could end up in any one of these categories. No one can perpetually stay in the green category with respect to all topics, whereas the red category is the market that is the hardest to reach, armed with facts. The ones we would ideally want to target are marked with the blue color, and they are called persuadables. Majority of the population falls into this category. It's important to remember that anyone can rise up to green or fall into the red throughout their lifetime, but they are more reciprocal to learning when in the blue or green category. With the Synfo intervention, we want to catch people before they fall into the rabbit hole. In this chart, I show the journey of a falsehood from its birth in the dark corners of the internet into the mainstream, and how Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube, along with other social media services, help it along the way. This map is pretty self-explanatory. These fake stories aren't generated by a grandma living in BC or by the good-hearted man who runs a meat company in Bozeman. No, it's not them. They are the ones falling for these false stories. Most times, their unfounded beliefs lead them to call their friends and family sheeple while typing in capitalized letters on social media urging us all to wake up. Then once in a while, the good-hearted man from Bozeman drives up to Reader Hall so that he can finally wake everyone up. If one has an emotional dependency upon a lie, then its truth becomes a matter of devout faith, superseding any evidence to the contrary. For example, people will believe in logically incompatible theories, like if you think Princess Diana was murdered, then you are more likely to believe that she's still alive, and both these can simultaneously be true. As much as technology has accelerated the spread of fake news, it's important that we look at ways to inoculate the user to fake news while working on the therapeutic approaches. Just as every pandemic is a statistical problem disguised as a medical one, so is this problem. Fake news is more than a problem about bad information. It's about uprooting trust in all information, including the bad one. Inherently, people don't like to be wrong, but what they dislike more is being told by someone that they are wrong. This is not to say that the people in the wrong don't want to be right. They just don't want someone known or unknown to rectify them. I get it. We've all been there. When looking for design solutions, the question I asked myself was, how do we create a functional, educational, and ethical design system that utilizes current technology to create better systems of formulation, dissemination, and implementation?
A very interesting experiment occurs in the guise of an augmented reality game called Pokemon Go. Pokemon Go was invented in Google, incubated there for many years, developed there, led by a man named John Hanke. And John Hanke invented an operation called Keyhole, which was invested in by the CIA and later purchased by Google and called Google Earth. When they decided to bring Pokemon Go to the public, they didn't want to bring it as a Google game. They brought it to market as Niantic Labs, which no one had ever heard of. just a cool startup with this cool game. So now we have this Google augmented reality game, and it turns out that the big game that is on top of the little game that the children are playing is a game that precisely emulates the logic of surveillance capitalism.
After a lot of deliberation and hopeless nights, I came up with Project Synfo. Synfo is a network of web products that forms a synergy of information to counter the widespread reach of misinformation and disinformation. It aims to exist as an umbrella for a range of digital web products with an integral aim to build people's trust in science and expertise, and in academic, journalistic, and legal institutions. Synfo is a human-centered small-scale design system which is infinitely scalable to local markets while being culturally and economically profitable. It is designed to influence a user's algorithm to change the user's mindset, which is achieved by using facts and fun. At Synfo, we understand that to perform inception for diversion, we need imagination. We need the simplest version of the idea, the one that will grow naturally in the user's mind. We need many simple ideas to work together in a synergy. In its most basic form, Synfo consists of a conspiracy theory aggregator app called Do Your Research, a mobile game called SpotFake, an ad agency dubbed Mad Ad, with an extensive research wing called Insight, and a digital media production studio called Tecadelic Studio, along with a fact-checking website called InFact. All these entities will be dependent on each other. Most, if not all, conspiracy theory websites lack a good design, which makes the user experience not a good one. The information is not presented in a cohesive way, but it's more of a data dump with arbitrary connections drawn. Most of these websites host the same content, and none of it is copyrighted. It is not that easy to copyright lies. These websites were basically blogs that eventually turned into websites selling stuff to their user base. The aim of Do Your Research app is to have a slick design and to keep track of conspiracy theories as they come into existence and evolve. At the same time, the app intends to provide the user a community and content they like, so as to stay installed on the user's mobile device. This is so that the use of web cookies and programmatic advertising can be executed with utmost precision within the Synfo network. This app will promote the SpotFake game, but it will not feature any ad-based counter messaging. SpotFake is a simple game that shows the user an image and the user has to spot if it's fake or real. These images could be anything from a 3D rendered image to an internet meme to debunked false stories and conspiracy theories. The content on the game will be constantly updated and targeted to the user based on their game profile. The game profile would be a backend feature that will keep evolving based on the answers provided by the user. The idea is to lead the user to be a critical thinker on their own as they level up in the game. It's important that the user believes that they themselves walk the path rather than someone else setting them on the path. Mad Ad is an advertising agency that is dedicated to creative planning of promotional and educational campaigns based on research and analysis data provided by Insight and by InFact, the fact-checking website. Mad Ad aims to target businesses, corporations, and private agencies as clients while striving to support credible non-profit organizations and educational institutions. Digital media content production will be done by Tecadelic Studios, which then can be supplied to partners and clients alike. Tecadelic Studio is a digital media production house that produces commissioned content depending on the campaign. Unlike a post-production studio or a game studio, this studio focuses on creating content that can be consumed in a moment. This content can range from memes to videos and everything in between, as long as it fits with the campaign being worked on. This studio will act as the body of Synfo. Insight is an in-house department at Mad Ad Agency that functions as a research and analysis bureau and doubles up as a data hub for Synfo. This department is looked up to for expertise in their field and is also responsible for hiring external expert consultants. Insight will also provide market research to target better ad placements. This department will act as the brain of Synfo. InFact is a fact-checker website which does just that by checking facts and debunking the most popular fake news and conspiracy theories. Insight will provide research and analysis data, while Tecadelic Studio will provide the content and data management services. InFact will function as a complementary research arm for Insight. This map is a combination of all the smaller systems that I have discussed up till now. with one big difference, and that is the target, right at the center of it all, the social media companies. The colored arrows are defined here. This map begins at the center and ends at the center. The best way to decipher this map is to select any one entity and follow the colored arrows going in or out of that entity. Let's take Tecadelic Studio as an example. Studio receives research data for content creation from Insight. Based on that data, the studio produces content for the game and for various social media ads. These ads are placed by Mad Ad Agency targeting the social media platforms. The studio would act as a data hub because it would be creating content for the network and will also be receiving research material to create that content. Now that I've introduced you to each of the elements on the map and their function in the system, let me take you through the user's journey. Before that, it's important to realize that a user may start their journey at the spot fake game. But that journey would still be a subset of the journey that begins at Do Your Research. Once the user has installed the Do Your Research app, Synfo will be able to programmatically target the user with ad content that would challenge their ideas. These ads won't show up in the Do Your Research app, but rather in the user's Facebook feed and YouTube feed. Again, these are ads. The user probably won't like them, but we keep on it. Because the user does not know which app is causing these ads to pop up. It's not like it's a product on Amazon that the user just checked and it starts showing up on their feeds. If the user responds positively and installs the spot fake game, then the user levels up in the Synfo. Now, here the user will stumble across facts and critical thinking as they play along. If at any point the user feels that this game is paid for by Bill Gates or George Soros, then the user will uninstall the game. As unfortunate as that would be, the user would still continue to see educational content as ads on all the other platforms, thanks to the Do Your Research app, web cookies, and programmatic advertising. In an ideal situation, the user will not uninstall the spot fake game, and instead will learn to think critically and research sources as they play the game along. We know we would have made a difference if the user escapes the rabbit hole and on the other side still despises Bill Gates, but this time for the monopolistic business attitude and not for trying to save dying kids in impoverished parts of the world.
All right, everyone, listen up. I don't know about you, but I, for one, am sick and tired of all the hate speech and microaggressions against our species. We have a new enemy out there, an almost invisible foe that is so bigoted, so racially biased, they actually think we should all die. They are trying to attract our youth using tactics that are underhanded and unfair. But no matter how hard they hit us, we cannot let them take from us our PC. And so I have been asked to stay on as your principal. A lot of changes will happen in the coming months. The bottom line is that the only thing that distinguishes those who want to kill us from those who don't is that we have the burning desire for social justice. We are at war, but the only way to win this war is to be as understanding, non-biased, and politically correct as possible.
This is going to be really hard.
As time goes on, we are only going to spend more time on the internet and on social networking services, which is why it's important that we control this fire before it gets too big. Under the guise of being free, social networking services leverage the user information and personality as an exchange fee. I know this fight is not going to be easy, but not fighting would make things harder for us all.